Good evening, everybody. Welcome to while our kids are filing in, I'll speak over them. Welcome to the Fayette County School Board of Trustees business meeting. It is Tuesday, November 12th. We are here at the administration building, and I think we've got some kids that are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job.
Okay, well, since all our kiddos are up here, we're going to go ahead and introduce Ms. Charlton, principal at Eastview, to introduce everybody.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm here with some of our Eastview sixth graders and two of their remarkable educators, Mrs. Sarah Jackson behind me and Mrs. Dana Burton. So we have art and music and art here with us, and their teachers have guided them and prepared a special performance for you tonight. They're going to be singing the preamble, and they also are going to be showing off some of their beautiful artwork that was featured in our Veterans Day program on November 5th. Today, their music and art stand as a heartfelt tribute to the brave men and women that serve our military. So I want you to please join me in welcoming Mrs. Jackson, Mrs. Burton, and our exceptional Eastview students.
Hello, I am Dana Burton. I'm an elementary art educator, and I'm at Eastview Everton and Fayette Central. And I collaborated with Mrs. Jackson to do some artwork for our Veterans Day program. So I put together a couple little packets to pass around so you guys can see their work. So 5th and 6th grade, they made some wonderful posters. So there's some pictures of some in there, and then they have a couple here for you to look at. They picked a branch of the military, did some research on it, and then made those awesome posters. Now go to this side. 3rd and 4th grade made these really pretty patriotic sunsets. They painted those, and I think they turned out awesome. And then our kindergartners, 1st and 2nd graders, use pointillism technique. It's where you paint little dots, and they made some American flags. Cool. All right. So I hope you guys all enjoy those. I think I have some amazing artists, and I'm very thankful to be part of such a great team. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys ready?
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and our posterity to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and our posterity to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
So on behalf of Eastview, just thank you. Thank you for seeing us and just recognizing our talent here at Eastview and some of our incredible teachers in the district. We do appreciate all of them and their parents and everyone coming here to support them today. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And Mark, I don't know, you probably had some seniors that couldn't recite the preamble.
They knew about Schoolhouse Rock. I read. Great job, kids.
I used to make my 8th graders memorize it, and I drove my colleagues crazy because we would be practicing in my classroom and they would be singing it all the way down the hallway, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. But you guys did a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Proud of you.
Yeah, see, I guess we're-
Thank you guys. So, so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah,
We're still looking at the pictures, Dana. Okay.
Thank you guys. Awesome
you
job.
very much.
Proud of you. Good job. And parents, you're welcome to stay or go. If you want to enjoy the board meeting, you're welcome to. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Yeah, thank you.
By chance, is the board meeting being recorded?
Yes.
And can I find out online then?
Yeah, she'll see it.
YouTube, on YouTube, TV3.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys.
Oh, that's
Something to say.
Chris's, and he's in the hallway. He may have forgotten it.
He's got a beautiful voice.
It's all sorts of words tonight.
Not so crowded. Are you passing those around?
That's all right, I just know Dana probably has to
Yes.
leave. Are they all the same? I don't.
No, there's different,
Oh, okay. All right.
there's some different ones.
Want to get a quick look at these before we,
The kids did
yeah,
a
there's the
fantastic job.
dots. Yeah, there's a clip there.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank everybody at Eastview for the kids and the parents.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll keep everybody. Okay, let's move on to the agenda. I would like to seek a motion to approve the agenda as submitted and amended.
Do that motion.
Thank you, Jeremy. A second?
I'll second.
I heard Chris first. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now is time for public comments on agenda items. Seeing none, move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes the approval of the minutes from the regular business meeting of 10/8/24 and the special meeting of 10/29/24, the personnel report that contains retirements, resignations, and leaves of absence, the approval of the October 2024 claims 69117 to 69402, and then donations. A donation of $500 from the Nurses Association to CHS Clinic to be used for student needs, a donation of $3,500 from Reed Health to the Spartan Athletic Training account to be used for athlete supplies and equipment to keep our athletes on the field, a donation of $1,302.78 from Fayette Central PTO to the teacher staff events to be used as to support a positive culture, a donation of $500 from Michael Grizel to WCC to be used by Precision Machine for student activities. Wow, that's great.
It is awesome.
We love our donations. I would like to seek a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Lori. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to the action items, personnel report, Mr. Harris.
Personnel report this morning, or this afternoon. We were moving last time, you missed it, Mrs. Sorry.
It was very early in the morning, Mr. Harris.
Under classified staff, recommending Christopher Burgess as the permanent sub-custodian throughout the district, Mia Edwards as a Head Start nutrition bus assistant at Little Spartan Preschool, Taylor Moore as a custodian at Fayette Central, Noah Oliver as a permanent substitute at the high school, Eva Palmer, student success coach at Frazee, Faith Richardson, special ed assistant at Frazee, Caitlin Watson as a Head Start nutrition bus assistant. Then under extracurricular staff, recommending Alex Fox as wrestling coach at the middle school, Quentin Jones as a boys assistant swim coach at the high school, Lindsay Keel as a girls varsity swim coach at the high school, Jason McHenry as a JV softball coach at the high school, Braxton Reveley as a 7th grade white boys basketball coach at, should be at the middle school, Danny Roselle, assistant JV coach at the high school, and Matt Watkins as JV baseball coach at the high school.
All right. Seeing the personnel report, I'd like to seek a motion to approve.
I so move.
Thanks, Ann. A second.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Chris. Any discussion?
It's just good to see people on the list that were students
I
here,
know.
athletes here, and now
Yeah.
come back to join us and
Mhm.
take care of our kids now.
Yes.
Awesome.
Great.
Very gratifying.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Approval of the Head Start Supplemental Grant. Ms. Cameron.
Okay. Fayette County Head Start is seeking approval to apply for $9,705 in supplemental funds to complete the state licensing process in Indiana. Our program is exempt because the LEA is the school corporation and we are in a school building. The program was licensed until 2019 when all the early childhood programs came together, which is now known as Little Spartans Preschool. At that time, the license had to be given up because there was updates that needed to be done to the building. So over time, those have been accomplished and now we're ready to get into the next steps of the licensing process, which all go around staff requirements, background checks, drug testing, and some additional pieces. Our program, we do that with our staff, however, with licensing, it has to be within a 90-day window of the application. So at this time with our continuation budget and the recent increases in wages, we don't have the extra funds to accommodate that. So that's why we're seeking approval to apply for these extra supplemental funds through Head Start. Are there any questions?
When you apply for extra funds, do they just need justification or do they question why the budget didn't contain, how difficult is
No,
that?
so the supplemental funds, there's just this big pot of money.
Okay.
And there are lots of Head Starts right now that are not staying fully enrolled. So lots of their money is going back into this supplemental fund. And then they grant different programs, extra funds based on what they require as a need. So earlier this year, we had a supplemental grant approved for playground resurfacing. That was under the health and safety, where they did approve that, but it took a little bit longer than like a program that might need ovens to cook food for their program. So it's just based on their need, and they might get back with us soon. It might be a long time from now, but.
Okay, all right. I'd like to seek a motion to approve the Head Start Supplemental Grant.
I so move.
Ann, thank you, and second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The approval of the Head Start Playground resurfacing bid.
So in September, we were approved, Head Start was approved with an additional supplemental grant, if you remember, for the playground resurfacing and to order an additional bus. We are ready to move forward now that those awards have been given to our program. And we are, in your board packet today, you should have seen 3 bids for the playground resurfacing. We solicited 3 different bids per the policies and procedures that are established with our corporation. And the Head Start program would like to recommend the bid of $225,596 from the Adventurous Child. This is a Cincinnati-based company. We've used this company in the past. We worked with Daryl in maintenance on what might be the best company to use, and they are known for their quality, longevity, and customer service.
All right, thank you for that. I'd like to seek a motion to approve the Head Start Playground resurfacing bid.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Lori. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
No,
Thank
it's
you,
your
Ms.
hard work.
Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up, the next item on the agenda is for the board to hold an additional appropriation hearing on the proposed bond proceeds. After a brief presentation by admin, there will be an opportunity for the public to make comments about the additional appropriation of the bond proceeds. The notice of this additional appropriation hearing was published as legally required. We now will open the public hearing. We ask that you state your name and address, limit your comments to the proposed additional appropriation of bond proceeds, keep any comments to 3 minutes, and avoid being repetitive if possible. Is anyone interested in speaking about the additional appropriations? Okay.
I can really quickly, Leslie, just to
Sure.
speak to that. So Randy, and you can help me if I leave something out, but we have a new bond, obviously, that we brought before you because of our increase in our AV and some needs in our facilities, namely the need at our football field and track in regards to our bleachers there that we all know have become a bit of a concern. Obviously, there's some things at the baseball diamond that still need completed as well, and Randy will speak that in a little bit, but the fact that we're going to get the money is one thing. The fact that we have permission to spend that money is a different thing. And so what we're doing now, essentially, with this additional appropriation hearing, is asking to spend that money. It's a little different. It doesn't have to be approved by the local Department of Local Finance like tax dollars would, but it still requires your approval in terms of moving that forward and asking for that additional appropriation. So the hearing is required by law to do so. And so, again, that was advertised in the local newspaper a few times. So, Randy, anything that
I said, just kind of as a reminder, the one thing for all government agencies, even if we have money, we can't spend any money unless we have an appropriation that allows us to spend the money. So while we're getting the money, this is the legal step necessary for us to have the authority to spend that money. So that's really what the appropriation resolution does. And just to update the board a little bit on all of this, we're probably trying to squeeze everything we can out of it. You approved earlier about $550,000 to move forward with the purchasing of the bleachers. That doesn't include the installs, that's part of it. But we have became aware of some other opportunities, I guess you would say. And that is, if you go out to the football, baseball area now, you'll see on the visitor side, I think all of the bleachers are off. The understructure is still there. That will eventually come down. Half of the home bleachers, maybe, as we glance across the field today, are probably the bleachers are off, so they'll have the understructure and then take that off. The new bleachers will be coming here sometime probably in the next month or two. But we've also been able to add to it a little bit. We aren't going to put in as many visitor bleachers as we currently have because we just don't have the need for it anymore. So we're able to save a little bit there. The same way on the home side, we're going to decrease it slightly, but we've been able to take that money kind of and trade off a little bit. And if you look out on the parking lot there between the football and the baseball area, you'll see what at least right now are called 2 press boxes. One of them will be a press box for the baseball diamond. The other one is going to be subdivided to create a 2 unisex restrooms, as well as a new concession stand that will fit between the baseball diamond and the football field that could be used for obviously baseball games, but could also be used during football season for the visitor side there. So we're also going to be putting bleachers in the baseball behind the backstop with all that. So there'll be bleachers and a press box behind the baseball backstop, and then the concession stand restroom between here and there, I guess is the best way to describe that. So you'll see all those things moving along. Right now we still fully anticipate that we'll have everything in place well before the spring sports get here. So that's our hope.
And Randy's right when he says we're trying to squeeze every ounce out of that. Obviously, being respectful for taxpayers and making sure that we use that money well. And like Randy said, we don't necessarily have a need for the bleachers to be as large as they were. And so, being able to get some of those baseball needs done with that, it's been we've been kind of playing with that a lot. And but I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now in terms of the needs we'll be able to take care of with those funds.
So now, on the agenda here, so we just did the hearing.
Correct, we
We
closed
don't
that.
seek a motion for that, it's for the appropriation resolution, is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay, and so are you presenting or that you are explaining it, but you're not reading the appropriation?
Yeah, that
Okay.
additional appropriation resolution is in your board packet, and so we would ask for approval of that resolution as presented, essentially allowing us, as we discussed, to appropriate those dollars towards the project. Once we have them in hand, we should have them in hand at the beginning of December is what we're looking at as far as having those funds on hand.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this for a couple of meetings now, about this appropriation, so, okay, just so the public knows. Okay, I'd like to seek a motion to adopt the additional appropriation resolution 2024-12. Thank you, Brian, a
I'll
second.
second.
Thanks, Mark, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, opposed same sign, motion carries. Okay, now on to Mr. Duncan about the
Yeah.
first reading of the items.
Yeah, if I can lay a little context out just really quickly, just to make sure everyone understands and knows where we are with this. If you remember back in September, I brought before you a proposal from Churchill and Antrim. They're a law firm in the state of Indiana that they specialize in board policy review and overhaul. And so I reached out to them today and I said, how many school corporations have you done from a beginning to an end, a complete board policy overhaul? And I think we're number 36. They said they had done 35. And so they've done this quite a bit. Obviously, the purpose of that is to make sure, kudos to Mr. Collins for being able to write board policy on his own and work his way through that. But I felt like we needed an attorney or a group of attorneys in the background that were writing policy for us to make sure that we're above board with legislation, that we're up to date with legislation every time a legislative session ends, like the one we just had in the month of March that ended, that we continually stay up with the board policies and law. And so super important. And just to make sure everyone knows, I mean, this process was started in September, right? I just received about 2 weeks ago the first set of board policies that they sent our way, which I brought before you today for first reading. Board policy's fluid, right? We know that. So, board policy can be changed next month. It can be changed in 4 months, right? Every time a legislative session ends, we review those policies we need to review. So that's kind of the process that we're using to do what we're doing. And so we're relying on Churchill and Antrim to do a deep dive into our policies. I do have a spreadsheet that shows us the new policies, which ones are legally required, which ones are recommended, how they intertwine with our current policies. And so they're doing that work for us. That's what we're paying them for. So the policies you see before you today are policies that came in that first batch from CCHA for a first reading. And as you know, we bring policies for a first reading. Obviously, if there are people in our community that have concerns with those policies and want to discuss them further, then we're open to that. And then we bring them back for a second reading. And then if we still need to massage those policies, that's completely okay as we move on throughout the process. So, with that said.
Before you dive
Yeah,
into
please.
those, I don't know if you all remember last spring, well, like Jeremy said, after the legislature meets, we usually get copies of policies with the highlight, like a line or two, just because legislature changes things. But at that time, I think I went and looked at some of our policies, and they were dated, I mean, we talked about this in 1990s.
1996, in the 1997.
So I grabbed just a few, just to see. I think there was one that said, the superintendent will communicate with the board via telephone, Western Union, telegram, or something else. And it was like,
I think that was one from the 1970s.
oh, that was a really old one.
It was incredibly old.
And at that time, I brought some to Scott and just said, okay, somebody needs to look at all these. Then I think if you guys remember, when we were interviewing superintendents, I think everyone asked, are you guys working with Neola? Are you going to revise all your policies? Because apparently, it's on our website. So people that were coming here to be a superintendent wanted to see what our policies looked like. So this is not new. And from what I remember Scott saying, it's a big, big job. And he was doing them individually with Michelle Cooper, our attorney. And it was just too much. So Jeremy asked the same question of us. If we were going to, who was doing our policies? And we were like, nobody. So that also gives even further back from September, just, we knew these things were out of date.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be a heavy lift. I mean, I told you from the beginning, I mean, it's going to be 12 to 15 policies that'll be brought to you for first reading each month and probably second reading as well. And so, and that'll be over the course of the next 11 or 12 months. So we understand that we've got a big task in front of us. And so, again, I want full transparency. We want to make sure these policies are what's best for our kids, our corporation. We want to make sure that they're in line with statute. That way we're not out of compliance anywhere, and we don't have holes in our policies. And we trust those individuals that we've hired to do that, to help advise us down that pathway. And that's where we're at. So, so here they are for first reading. I can't possibly read them all. So when we say first reading, absolutely. That doesn't mean I'm literally going to read them all, but I will give you a few just highlights. The non-discrimination and anti-harassment policy obviously is a very important policy. I'll be honest, when I was at South Henry, we had Neola, and I think this policy changed 3 or 4 times over the course of the last 3 years because of statutory changes. So Title IX changes all the time, like things just change. So this one is up to date. The language is what it should be. But you can go through there and you can see it's the whole process. If you have a grievance, it goes through our Title IX sexual harassment procedures. All of those things are there. Again, I don't want to read this with a fine-tooth comb, but the legalese is there. Because I had the question, why is it so long? Well, the law requires a lot of us. And if we get ourselves in a situation in which we have a complaint or we have something, we have to go to, this is our Bible, if you will, that we follow in those circumstances. And so that is there. The next one is A200, which is the firearm, weapons, and destructive devices. It essentially goes through the Indiana law and the fact that it prohibits individuals from possessing, storing, making, or using certain devices on school property. It does have some exemptions in there, obviously for law enforcement personnel, for SROs, and the like. It also has a prohibition for allowing firearms to be locked in employees' vehicles or visitors' trunk while they're on school property, if they're done so according to Indiana law. And so that's just a few highlights of that policy, but you can read that deeper at your own leisure. A225, reporting of suspected child abuse or neglect. All of our employees are mandated reporters. All of us are in the state of Indiana if we suspect child abuse or neglect with one of our kiddos. And so it just talks through the process of making that oral report to DCS, that is their first step. They don't have to go to an administrator first. They shouldn't. Do not pass go straight there and you make the phone call. And then report to the people afterwards if you need to. 8300, Terry was kind enough to look this over for me. It's our acceptable use policy. Essentially, this governs the use of our internet, the use of our devices. Just make sure that there are clear and appropriate boundaries for our students and our staff in regards to the use of our internet, like I said, our devices that we put in the hands of our kids and our staff members as well. But again, Terry, thank you for reviewing that. I appreciate that to make sure that you feel comfortable with its contents. A301 is a wireless communication device policy. This is a new policy based upon the most recent legislative session where essentially our legislators made the decision to ban the use of wireless communication devices in the classroom during instructional time unless certain exemptions were met, and those exemptions are spelled out here. And it defines what a wireless communication device is, what instructional time means, all of those things. And so our student handbooks are in compliance with this. And I wrote an article for the newspaper a week or so ago, just saying, hey, I'm excited from what I'm hearing from our kids and our staff members as far as compliance from our student body. So B250, this is really, really important. This is school board member ethics, but I want everyone to hear this. This policy hasn't changed, okay? So our previous policy simply stated that we would follow ISBA's Code of Ethics. This one just writes it down. This one just takes it, copies and pastes it into our policy. If you notice on the bottom of the policy, it even says the source is Indiana School Boards Association. Okay, so this is what we're currently governed by. This hasn't changed, and so I just think that's really important to say, just to make sure there are no misconceptions out there. about that. So I guess we could have just kept the old policy in place, stuck a new number on it, but obviously with our recoding and everything else, I think it's important that we bring this back to you so that we have it as we need to have it moving forward. C200 is anti-bullying. Obviously, bullying is a big thing. It's a big buzzword in education in today's world. This essentially just makes sure that we're above board, that we're in compliance with law as far as the definition of bullying, and then our response to alleged bullying within our buildings. What are we to do? It does spell out specifically that this doesn't apply to staff. That would be their anti-harassment policy. This is students only. But it does talk through all of the things that we're required to do, including reporting. I don't know if you know this, we report annually to the state of Indiana. Every incident of bullying that's reported to us or that we are able to justify as being bullying.
I think this was important because it gives very, very good definitions of what is bullying, what constitutes bullying, and what is not. And I think that this is really something that's important for all of our stakeholders to understand, that what we may consider bullying from a personal perspective, from a legal perspective, does not necessarily meet those criteria, and we need to certainly, I think the definitions in here are incredibly important for everybody to understand, so there is not this my child was bullied and nothing was done kind of thing. We have specific criteria that have been set out here, and we have specific procedures to deal with that. And I think we just need to do a better job of explaining to everyone involved what exactly it is, because bullying is a word that's bandied around a great deal. But from our perspective as a school corporation, this has done a really, really good job of definition, what it constitutes, what it is, what it isn't, what we intend to do about it, and I think it makes it incredibly clear that if what is happening meets these requirements, it simply will not be tolerated.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it has no place here in Fayette County, for sure.
I think the part that is confusing is that bullying is defined as repeated acts or gestures. That is, to me, the defining piece. That it's a persistent pattern of a child being targeted by one or more individuals.
Sure.
That does not mean, and I think it's important to state, that if your child has been treated poorly by another student, but it's not a repeated act, it's not a pattern, that it's not going to be investigated by the school. It still is something that the student can report and that the administration is going to deal with. It's just not defined necessarily as bullying.
Yeah.
It's a negative behavior, but I think that's
really good.
It's pattern and practice. It's pattern and practice of behavior. Kids are going to be nasty to one another on occasion because they're children, and that we don't like it as adults, and we try to tell them to refrain from this behavior, but we know that it's going to happen. But if it becomes a pattern and a practice of behavior targeting a particular child for whatever reason, then it meets the criteria of bullying. But I think thank you, Leslie, I think that's a very, very important.
Yeah, thank you both, that's really good. I think there's a word there too with intent, there has to be an intent to essentially harass, ridicule, humiliate, which I think sometimes comes into play as well. But yeah, so that legal definition is really, really important. I'm sorry.
I forgot somewhere in here, what does it say about things that happen outside of school?
Well, statute in the state of
what?
Indiana, that essentially becomes the school's purview regardless of context,
Okay.
which is a challenge, we'll be honest, right? So, we can't be everywhere, and we can't expect our teachers, administrators, school staff members to be everywhere. Our duty is not necessarily to stop it, because we can't be there in that room when that happens or on that computer when it occurs. Our duty is to set a good example of what we expect, right? Set those boundaries in place, and then respond appropriately when it happens. And so it, unfortunately, to Ann's point, does happen sometimes. I wish we lived in a world in which everyone was kind all the time. but that's just not the reality. But yes, we do have a legal obligation to address those situations that even occur outside of the school day and outside of the context of the school building.
Okay.
And I think that also addresses the idea of cyberbullying,
Mhm.
because that certainly is a huge impact on our kids. It's not just left at school, it goes out for everybody to see and grows exponentially. And then that pattern and practice of behavior becomes more prevalent, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. D150, thank you for the feedback on that. D150 is board superintendent relationship, essentially just laying out my role as a superintendent, that I'm the chief administrator of the corporation, that I'm responsible for, to make these recommendations to board policies to you, that it's my responsibility to manage the day-to-day operations of the school corporation, have the ability and the authority to close school if I need to. So hopeful, it's been a nice fall so far. And it says that you as a board will evaluate me annually for my performance. So just basically spells that out. That's a pretty easy one. Board staff communications D175 is an attempt to lay out chain of command. That's what this is. And so I would be curious to hear some input on this, but basically stating that staff communication to the board should really go through the superintendent, board communication to the staff, the opposite way, the same thing. That as a board, we have to be careful what we discuss in terms of school business outside of the context of the boardroom, publicly like this.
Yes.
And so I think it's an important policy, again, trying to lay out that chain of command. And I think, please hear my heart on this, it's really, really important, that you are, as elected officials, you are constituents for the people that elected you, right? And so when people bring you concerns, it's okay to hear those, right? It's important to hear those. And that's what you do. What you do with it is what really matters, right? Is you take that to the individuals that are responsible for making decisions within the context of their buildings, within the context of the corporation, to be able to handle those things appropriately. And so hear that. That's really, really important. But again, this spells out what I believe to be an attempt to establish that chain of command and do so in a way that I feel like is pretty appropriate. But again, open to conversation about that as well.
So I didn't have any issues with it.
The only issues I had were, and I raised this to Jeremy, there have been times that a staff member will come to a board member, and in my case, a lot of it happened some years back. It still happens rarely, but on occasion. And I think we all appreciate chain of command, that, you need to talk to, whether it's a parent or whether it's a staff member, that the staff knows who they're supposed to go to if they have an issue.
Sure.
If they don't feel safe going to their administrator, then, like I think happens with parents too, then they go to the next step, which would be to talk to Kim. If they didn't feel safe talking to Kim, then the next person would be Jeremy. And then if they, for whatever reason, either didn't get satisfaction, I think they really need to talk to Jeremy and not be afraid, because that's your last step. But I told Jeremy I feel like they do need to have the board as somebody to come to at that point, because that's available to parents, and that's usually where we manage that. But that was my only concern. I didn't see it written in there, and I wanted to make sure that, it says here that take appeals to the board, but that kind of sounds to me like a decision has been made and this individual is now appealing it. And I think we already know that we are part of the appeal process, but what about before that? That would be my question.
Yeah, and I have we had a wonderful discussion about this, and I want to thank you so much for your input. I think too that there needs somewhere in our policy to be a delineation. As publicly elected officials, we have certain rights, we have certain responsibilities, we have certain things that are given to us in the fact that we are elected officials. And there is nowhere in this policy that reflects that. It says a lot about what we do as board members, but it says and when those two things potentially come into conflict, it creates a bad situation for both sides. In other words, as a public official, yes, we can do this. This may not sit well with a staff member, with admin, whatever, but it's well within the ambit of what we are allowed to do. And I think we just need to be able to, both sides need to understand where we are and how we differ, how we're the same. And clearly, our objective is exactly the same. We want to try to create the best educational thing we can for our kids.
Sure.
But I think there kind of has to be a balance. I think there has to be a balance. And you and I discussed this, and I was really appreciate, what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, where are these lines? And as Leslie said, what happens when all else fails? What do we do then? And we don't want parents and constituents to feel completely impotent as far as like, wait a minute, we've done everything we're supposed to do, where do we go now? Because as public servants, that becomes our job, to be responsive to those people who have trusted us. We hope everybody does a good job all the time, but we know that doesn't happen on either side of the fence. And I think it's just really important that we address that in some fashion in our policies, that both sides.
Like a different policy? Like a different policy,
Or
not in
just
here.
incorporate it into something like this, that there are these statutory things, so there's no confusion
Sure.
between the roles. And so when serious issues come up, which I hope they don't, but we all know that they do, then both sides of this coin have their parameters. And whether they like them or not, there are certain areas that are just not appropriate for either side.
Yeah.
And I think that's important that we make incredibly clear to both sides.
Yeah,
So
good.
that would be, just to my mind, a necessary kind of addendum to this.
Sure.
In our discussions, I think sometimes the intent of what is said and how it is perceived can be very different, and I think we need to make sure that we are being incredibly clear with our language and how this is, and vagaries and things like that just don't work well.
Sure, understand.
So exactly what are you saying?
Exactly, what I'm saying.
You got me turned around like a lost
Okay, well,
puppy.
what I'm saying is that there are certain things that we have as elected officials, certain rights and
What are
responsibilities.
those?
We cannot be removed except from the vote of our constituency, okay? We have certain rights under tort claims for things that we say. And I think that these should just be included so both sides know where we're coming from. It's not a matter of right and wrong, it's just a matter of complete understanding of what's going on. Because there's a big difference between being an employee and being an elected official. Okay? And sometimes those lines get confused for whatever reason.
Yeah, and the goal of the policy is to set those boundaries within which we work, right? And what I always want to know when I step into a new situation is like, what am I working with? Like, what boundaries do I have? Where do I need to stay within, right? And so that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we establish those expectations of communication and who communicates with whom and how we do that and what is the appropriate way to go about it. The reality of it is, it's my job to help facilitate a culture of trust within our organization. Above all else, that is the most important thing that I've been charged to do as a superintendent. And that's personal trust, right? And that's also professional trust. And we have to have that culture of professional trust to be able to work and to operate. And so, but we have to have a mutual understanding of what that looks like for that trust to live, right? And so that's what this is trying to do. It's saying that if you're a staff member how do you communicate with the board, right? What does that process look like? If you're a board member, how do you communicate with the staff? How do you interact? In what context? You talk board business, in what context do you talk personal business? And how do those two things separate themselves, if that makes sense? And so, again, that's the intent. This is a policy that CCHA has drafted, right? That is used in school corporations across the state. This is not unique to Fayette County School Corporation, based upon any circumstances or events that have occurred. And so, yeah.
Like, personally, I don't see anything wrong with the policies myself.
Well, the way I look at it, it just basically tells us where to stay in our lane, and the only thing sometimes I know, sometimes with the board, we struggle with is keeping things confidential, but this spells out pretty much the parameters of what a school board member should be. That's my opinion.
The same thing about diplomatic immunity in there? I'm just curious.
Mark, Ryan, did you guys have anything to add?
I just think as public servants, we all have to realize that we're not agents for any one person or one group. We're agents for the entire community and the entire corporation. And if you put anything above those two entities, I think you violated the trust that the public had given you to serve on this board. I agree with the policy as it's written. I think it's pretty simple. A lot of policies aren't simple, but as I read this, I don't have any problems with it whatsoever.
Drafted by professionals.
Yes.
Do this every day.
Yeah, we didn't draft this.
Definitely wasn't me, so.
The only thing I would like,
A little bit addressing this and having gone through this process a couple of long tedious times. The other thing, starting, really, this is the first night we've really got into it, also realize we may go through something here and you may look at it and go, well, there's no policy on ABC. Well, that may not be coming until March or April, as it's a long process. And likewise, when we get done with the process, then, let's say November of next year, somebody may go, you know, I didn't see any policy on XYZ. Then we can go back to the attorneys and say, you know, we didn't see a policy on this. Do you have something or could you write something? So it's definitely fluid, and this is sure not anywhere near the end yet as we go through.
Yeah.
so if we're talking about any language changes, I think if Ann has suggestions, she can
Please,
contribute
yes.
those to Jeremy about a language change. The only
Should you
thing,
share it with the board?
well, yes, I think it would be
She
good
can
to
email it
share.
to him or whatever.
No, I will be,
Yeah.
I will happily do that. That's
And
not, that's not a problem.
And my only word that I guess I just, on that the staff communications to the board, I don't know, when I see the word appeals, to me, it's like I'm appealing a decision that's already been made.
Sure.
I don't know if we could, this policy is not intended to deny staff members the right to take concerns to the, I would rather see like concerns to the board through the established procedures, which then sends a clearer message. It's not like after a decision has been made. I realize they may mean by appeals, I'm appealing to you as the board because I've gone to all these people and it hasn't worked, but I guess that word strikes to me a legal definition, so I don't
Sure.
know.
Yeah, and I'll have some conversation with him about why specifically that word's there.
Yeah.
And what they mean by appeals, and if that has a definition that is deeper than.
And I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that piece. That's the only part that, and I communicated that to Jeremy, just I asked questions. He said, no, that's still fine. A staff member can come to you if they haven't achieved satisfaction through the appropriate channels, but I didn't see that in there. So that was my only
Yeah,
concern.
that's fair, absolutely, 100% fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and I sincerely appreciate Jeremy's willingness to discuss this and go over some issues. And I will happily communicate with the rest of the board to change. And again, I think it's just an addition to this, which makes it very clear what the parameters are as a public official, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. And again, it does not, I don't think it has to be in conflict. I think it's just a matter of education on all parts to know what we can all do. And everyone wants to do what's in the best interest of the kids, and I think that has to be primary.
For sure.
Sure.
Or
Okay.
I didn't want to leave you out, Lori, if you had,
No.
you're good. All right, that is D175. We'll keep massaging that one and see where we end up, so. G360 is data breach and protection. This one was also vetted by Terry. I know of 2 local school corporations, I can't name them by name, but that were in the last 3 months have established or had issues with ransomware attacks. School corporations are becoming an ever increasing target of these things because you think about it, we're I believe the largest or second largest employer in the county. And so, yeah, we do have cybersecurity insurance. We have all those protections in place. Terry and his team do a wonderful job. This essentially just spells out that process. If we would have a security breach, how we notify our constituents, all of those steps in that process.
This is so important right now because we contain so much, the Fayette County School Corporation in our data has so much information, so much personal information about so many people. And I think Terry and our team does an excellent job of trying to prevent that if we think we can prevent that completely, we're fooling ourselves.
I'd like to say that there is a foolproof plan, but unfortunately, it seems like
No, there's
still
no,
getting-
unfortunately, the hackers are smarter than we are.
it's really unfortunate. H100, school visitors and parent and family engagement. This is essentially a Title I policy that essentially provides guidelines for school visitors, family, that parent-family engagement piece. There's a school visitor policy here that spells out that. This is a requirement of Title I, which is our federal funding. So we have to make sure this is up to date and in line with statute. H250 is a school library material removal request procedure. Essentially, the state of Indiana outlines 2 reasons why someone could request the removal of material from a library. Those 2 statutory reasons are there, and they actually spell them out. So one of them being obscene matter or performance, the other one being matter or performance harmful to minors. And so those 2 reasons, and there is some pretty detailed language there that tells what those 2 things mean. And then it goes through the process of what happens if we'd have somebody who would request that a material be removed from our libraries. What does that process look like? What do those steps look like? What does that review committee look like? Who does it contain? Who's on that? And again, all of those things are statutory and required. And so our policy right now, we do have one for material review, but it's pretty short. It doesn't include any of these definitions.
And
So-
it's not really adequate, I don't think, for the culture that we have today, because this is an issue with a lot of school corporations in a lot of other states. And for us to deal with this with specificity and a process, it's not just somebody says, well, I want this book taken out of the school library because I don't like it, or a group doesn't like it. It gives it a much better process for doing this.
It sure does. It spells all that out for us, which is really, really nice. So, yeah, so that is it. There are 2 forms related to those board policies that CCHA has given us as well. There are some administrative guidelines too. And so board policy governs the way that we work. Administrative guidelines are what our administrators and our administrative team follow in terms of where the rubber meets the road is how we make the work happen. And so those administrative guidelines do not require your approval. And so most of our new board policies, I shouldn't say most, a good number of our new board policies will have an accompanying administrative guideline that we'll follow as administrators in carrying out the work and the policies that you've set for us. So that is it for the first reading of those board policies. Any questions, concerns?
I think we need to, I want to clear the air, as if some of you may have seen the newspaper today. And it highlighted to the 3 of you that this policy was an attack against you in some form or nature. And it is not. These policies, updating has been talked about for over a year now. We are not doing that, but then paper insinuates that we are doing some form or fashion to you. So I'm clearing the air that that's what the truth about it. Additionally, these policies were private to the board and such. somehow they got leaked out, or the conversation of it. So I'm just letting you know, we did not do that. We had no part of it. I'm just stating the fact. If you got questions, you want to talk to me, you want to be more than willing to talk.
Yeah, I appreciate that, thank you. And to that point, I mean, I had a good conversation today with the three of you, and just making sure you understood how much we appreciate your service in advance, and the fact that you're here, and I've always operated under the principle that I assume the best intentions. In fact, on my board in my office, you can go in there right now, and there are my principles that I live by daily, and one of them is to assume the best intentions. And if you do that, man, life is so much easier, and things are so much better. And so that's what I would ask, like when we put these policies in front of people, there's nothing hidden, there's no agenda other than to do what's best for kids. And so if we can live with that premise that, man, we're doing what's right, and to trust, right? I, as your superintendent, will work hard every day to do what's best for children, to do what's best for our people. Like, I love our people that do the hard work in the classroom. I'm here to serve them. They're not here to serve me. And so I will always do what I feel like is best for them. And so if we can just lead with that trust and lead with that idea that, man, if we just assume the best intentions for people, these board policies, again, we've been working on these for a while, and this whole board policy overhaul has been in play well before an election was even a thought. Mm-hmm. And so, especially for me, like, I was brand new. I came in and said, you know what, we need help with these board policies. Like, I don't want to do this on my own because I don't think I can do it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. Mm-hmm. Well before any election was even a thought. And so we love our friends at the newspaper. I love our friends at the News Examiner. But I just ask that people would assume the best intentions for the work that happens, because we have good people and they're working really hard for kids. So, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, public comments. Persons wishing to make the board aware of suggestions, ideas, or comments may address the board at this time. Comments which involve personnel or students must be discussed in private. And again, these are forms that are filled out prior to the meeting. So, seeing none, superintendent discussion group reports. This is the space. We don't often have discussion here, but this is actually the space where anybody can talk about, like Jeremy could talk about his representation on the TIF board, and Ann could talk about her representation on the park board, and Mallory gives us the report on Head Start, but Ann's on that committee as well. So if there's another committee or something that you're doing.
Or if you've been to a convention or a state.
Right. That's kind of the space for that. But if we always have it in there without really understanding what that is. So I wanted to clarify that.
I really appreciate that because on its face, it implied something different.
Well, and I think hearing, I don't know what, something Jeremy said to me sometime made me think about, discussion groups, that's like committees, that's like, yeah, we should be. And so I have been reluctant, or whatever, I forgot, I didn't know, I didn't think to ask. You've been sitting on the TIF board, we could have been asking you all this time, like, is there anything you want to share? And same with park board. I feel like Head Start you could share, Ann, but Mallory usually keeps us up to date on that. But the outside groups, or outside things you're doing that you want to share with the board. So that's just a clarification. Principal directors reports.
I just have a quick shout out. I just wanted to give Mr. Duncan a shout out. He not only attended our Big Boo family event, but he also dressed up in costume, which was wonderful. We had over 350 children under the age of 13. And without all of our wonderful community partners.
I have a picture on my phone I will send to you. Great.
Yes. Mr. Duncan was a wonderful group.
I don't know if that's a compliment.
It was good. The intent was the kids loved it.
It was fun.
And it showed that you are not afraid to become a little bit embarrassed when somebody pulls off your nose.
Absolutely, and they did. They snapped my nose a few times, yeah. It was fun, though. Thank you for the invitation.
Director of Operations report.
The first thing I'll point out, you have the fund report in front of you. Continue to chug along and be in good condition. During the past 2 pay periods, I think, the 2 large pay increases, and I say large, talking about in terms of virtually every employee group, back on the, get my math right, the October 25th pay, I believe all of the classified staff received their pay increases as well as any retro pay. And on the November 8th pay, which was just last Friday, the certified staff received their retro pay and everything based on the contract. So all of those are, well, not all the certified staff will show up in the November report. But fund report's there. A couple other things I want to point out, just bring to your attention. If you haven't been there, this sounds a little strange. If you go to the Spartan Bowl, go to the bathroom. Go in and look. You know, anything else, I don't want to get TMI here, but I do want to thank a few local people or local companies because the best I can determine, I think the last time the restrooms were truly gutted was in 1958 when the Spartan Bowl was built. So they look really good. They're still, I'm just going to leave it as a little teaser. There's still more to come, but we're not quite there yet. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll see. But I do want to thank Wholesale Carpets. They were the ones that installed the tile, did all of the work there. Powell Plumbing did a lot of the plumbing work behind the stuff that you never see. Layton Electrical, they did the new lighting and those kind of things. And R.H. Porter, Bobby Porter's construction company here, and he does a lot of our work, and all of those companies did an outstanding job to significantly bring our restrooms up to much better attractive look, I guess you would say. And then the other one, just to give, I guess this is another teaser. I don't know that I'm in that business, but you haven't seen Skillman and Gibraltar, remember those guys? For quite a while, it seemed like we saw them more than we saw everybody around the table, it seemed like. They have not disappeared. They're still doing all of the work in the background, getting ready, but between now and our next scheduled board meeting in December, we should see some activity and work beginning at Frazee. So the projects are on schedule, they're ready to get started, and once we get through the Thanksgiving holidays, we will start seeing action at Frazee.
They were there over fall break, when the kids went in the buildings, there were.
Well, they were putting in new furniture, actually. We had new furniture installed
Yeah.
at Frazee and at Fayette Central over fall break, so, yep.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent's report.
I don't have a lot. I was glad to be back, and I appreciate everybody's support, and
Glad to see
both
you.
my son and I are doing well, so I appreciate that. So I don't have anything really to report, other than I appreciate all the teachers and my administrative team for really picking up and taking the lead while I was unable to do so. So appreciate it. I'm glad to be back.
Superintendent's report.
I will say, I'm really glad. In more ways than just the work that you do. We had breakfast yesterday morning, and just to have Kim's voice and her laugh, and it's amazing to have her back. Super mama. So, thanks for being an inspiration to us. Had a National Honor Society induction, 38 kids, which was really super awesome, just a few weeks ago. Randy, I don't know if you want to speak to this a little bit, but we did get our numbers back from the state of Indiana in regards to what percentage of our education fund dollars go towards our salary and benefits of our teachers. If you remember, the statute is 62%. A lot of corporations out there struggle to get to 62%. They really do. I mean, they're right around that mark or barely at it. Randy, 74-ish%.
Yeah.
And so, you often hear about teacher compensation, how important that is. I will tell you, you've done a wonderful job of taking care of your people. I want you to hear that. That's really important. Our starting salary, we'd still like to see that higher. But, with those bumps on the salary schedule, if we're able to give them, they have to be bargained every year. That $15.75 people can earn a pretty good wage in a pretty short period of time here at Fayette County, which is a huge deal to retain our teachers because we have great people and we want them to stay. And so thank you for your hard work on that. Thank you to Randy and to Scott previously on their work on that, because 74% is, I've not heard of anyone that I've ever talked to, my superintendent groups, that were that high.
Why are some corporations lower? Are they needing the money for operations? Is that they can't make their operations work unless they take?
There are so many factors that go into a budget between school districts and tax rates, and it's multifaceted.
Okay.
I guess what I would say, is we're getting into the next, now that we've had the election, now that we're getting into the next phase of things, whenever a legislature says our schools need to be paying more towards
Vouchers.
well, no, I'm not going there. I could, but when they say the school districts need to be paying more towards teachers, I would tell you, when you look at 74% of our budget going to, and that's the classroom. That does not include central office and support staff, custodians. It doesn't include those. But when you look at 74% of our education funds going directly into that classroom, the only way we're going to be able to bump that higher is we need more money from the state of Indiana. We can't generate it locally. We're doing all we can locally, and we're putting in, because when you look at that other 26%, it's a little less than that even, that's also the part that's assisting with all of the other things, with supplies, materials, all of the other things that help keep a building alive and keep a building going. So 74% is as high as any. I'm sure I wouldn't think we are the highest in the state of Indiana, but I would tell you we are very close to the highest in the state of Indiana with that percentage.
So good, kudos, right, for a job well done. And speaking to that, we, obviously the last meeting we had was in the morning. We haven't had a regular session since then, so I do want to say that thank you to our CTA, or not our CTA, sorry, our association. I apologize, I'm used to being in CTA schools. Mrs. Sleep, Mr. Cooley, their team for their work with bargaining. Really easy process, very collegial, just a sense of like working together towards what's best for our people, and just want to thank them for that, because we were able to ratify that collective bargaining agreement. All of that's been uploaded to the state in Gateway, and so we're in a good place there. We're going to be starting that copy machine refresh that we've talked about. So Terry, that's coming like 26th, 27th, something like that. So hopefully, did you set a date?
We've got a planning meeting tomorrow to hit some more of those milestones and target dates.
Awesome, perfect.
A question on that one. Terry, are you going to provide training for those of us who use them a lot and are maybe technologically challenged when trying to deal with new things? Because I spend a lot of time copying.
There's just no hope for you.
I know that. I know that. I know that.
I'm joking.
I know you are.
The Toshiba group that we're working with has trainers that will facilitate those things. Dates and milestones to be determined.
Okay.
We've got some things with the machines and their manufacturer and showing up that define some of the other timelines that we have to take into consideration, training being one of those.
Okay, well, it's just that it's something that's used on a daily basis, as we well know, and when you have teachers depending upon you to get certain materials copied by a particular time because they need them for their classroom, it's very helpful to know, okay, I'm gonna have a machine that I know how to run and it's gonna do what I need it to do to provide these things for the classroom teachers. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you,
Appreciate
Terry, in
that.
advance. We appreciate your team. That'd be a good thing, obviously putting tools in the hands of our people, right?
Yeah.
Which is really important.
Terry, by the way, I won't be needing any of that training.
Oh, wow.
You can come by and make copies for us anytime, Mark. You want to give, I know we had the Fall Sports Awards tonight, but big shout out to the Fall Sports athletes and coaches who work so hard to put a good product on the field to play. Boys soccer obviously won a sectional, boys tennis won a sectional as well. Had a couple kiddos that went to the cross country regional. I know our cheerleaders had a really good showing. I think they were state finalists in their association. So I just want to give a shout out to those people, and Andrea and Damon and their team. no one really understands how much time they put in. They beat me here sometimes, and they definitely beat me staying at night, and that sacrifice is made obviously for our kids. And so I want to publicly say thank you to those and all the people that they have that coach and work, and we're obviously pushing into the winter sports season. Thanks in advance to those folks who are part of that. So we put a call out essentially to say, hey, we need substitutes as part of the Fayette County School Corporation. We had a really good response from our people, and we're working our way through people that have applied to be substitute teachers. Thank you to Randy and his team, Crystal, for their hard work on that. But we're hopeful that we can put more people in our classrooms to work with kids, so that, I know there's been concern. We hear from people that say, we have to use our classified staff to cover classes and those types of, we never want to, right? That's never our goal. Just unfortunately, sometimes you've got to have somebody in that classroom with kids, right? We have that responsibility to keep them safe and to make sure they're supervised. So kudos to Mr. Harris and his team, and hopefully get some new folks in there and working with our children. And it's always an option on the table. We'd love to have you if you have time in your schedule and you want to serve and want to make a little extra money to substitute teach for us. So that's all I've got.
All right. For the good of the cause, I just want to start by welcoming the 3 new board members that will begin in January. There's not a big crowd, otherwise, I would have you guys stand up, but since there's 3 of you that nobody else seems to know, so. Dustin Munson, Sasha Henderson, and Erica Back will be joining us. I'd like to say just a couple things about the election, both local and national. We live in a really divisive time. I can hardly watch the news anymore. I haven't watched the news as much since COVID, actually. That was so depressing during the COVID era. We are losing a wonderful board member in Jeremy, and the election is what it is. But I have nothing but positive things to say about Jeremy's contribution and being really a stellar board member, because it takes a lot of skill, I think, and I fall short as well in that category sometimes with not always looking at all sides of an issue, and that is, I learned that from Ralph Burchett when I first came on the board, and he said there's not 2 sides of an issue, there are more than 2 sides of an issue. You always think there's one side that is opposed and one side that's in favor, but there's all the other ones in between. And that's one of the biggest jobs, I think, for us as board members, is to listen to all sides of the issue. But I want to welcome you guys, and we look forward to having you here. We have 2 outgoing sitting board members also that did not run, and we're just going to be lost. But Lori's been here forever. No, nothing about age, just about time served on the board. And she knows boardsmanship better than probably any of us do. So, and Mark has just been a wonderful board member and has contributed. And I know we're with you another month, but I just think it's the right time to recognize the work that this board has done. I also want to recognize Mr. Duncan. Wow, I think we've said this at past meetings, everybody's talking about you in a good way. You just make yourself known. You are definitely a public servant, and we are very grateful to have you, and you're just showing up everywhere, and we're so appreciative of the good work you do. So that's what I was just here for, kind of a let's be kind and let's be good to each other, and let's try to move forward in a positive way. So.
I would like to recognize Grady Tate. Grady was a longtime sports director of the News Examiner. He had to give that up for health reasons. He has worked his way back into doing things for the school. He's worked with Andrea to do the announcing for softball and a few things. And he's going to be my partner in crime at the middle school for our winter sports seasons.
Awesome.
And I am just absolutely thrilled to have him there. We had a really good conversation today. He says, can you make me bigger print programs? I said, absolutely, I can make you bigger print programs. It is not a problem. Terry's even going to give me new machines to do it. But it's not just Grady, it's the other people that volunteer for our sports things, for, in our classrooms. I think that we don't necessarily appreciate their value, their time that they give. Grady loves what he does, and I'm so honored to have him with me. We're gonna have a really, really good time. But Grady is not the only person. We have a lot of unsung heroes that really, really work with kids. People who contribute, and I'll put in a plug for the Little Spartan Preschool, for their pantry. Groups who give goods for not only their clothing, I know we have coats and hats and gloves and things like that, but give food. Church groups, individuals that see the need, and Mallory's group does such a fantastic job, but that's kind of at ground zero. When we have those very, very young families and young people, they have very specific needs, and people in the community work very, very hard to try to give them what they need. And I think that sometimes we just do not recognize, as corporately, I don't think we recognize as much as we should. All the volunteers, I know, Mr. Duncan, you're working with Mrs. Schaefer with something about some religious organizations in town working to meet the needs of various schools and various groups of kids. This is a small community, really, and we have many, many needs. And I think the more that we can work together in concert to fill the needs of the community, and it's not going to mean a lot from anyone, but a little bit. It's like the old stone soup analogy. You know, everybody adds a little bit, and eventually you get a lot. And I'm very, very hopeful and very, very thankful for all of the support that we get here from our various people in our community, and I think that we did a really fine job in finding new leadership that's where his heart is too. So thank you very much.
And I'm humbled by your words, but please know that I'm thankful for you guys. And I also firmly recognize, just very quickly, I want to get you out of here, but that being a board member, you don't do it for the money, right? And sometimes you take shots in public that you don't deserve. And I want to thank you for doing that, even though you don't have to, right? And so, thank you. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you.
Any other good of the cause things happening out there? Mr. Hunt?
Yes, I'll make
Your
that
job.
motion to adjourn the meeting.
And
I'll
Mr.
second
Baker.
that motion.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand, pose same sign. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.